Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're basically putting on our academic hats and stepping into a film theory class to dissect a true directorial legacy. We're going to be talking about what I consider to be a vastly misunderstood masterpiece, AI, artificial intelligence. We'll be looking at how two of the absolute greatest cinematic minds in history essentially merged their distinct styles, and we'll unravel the deeply philosophical questions this film raises about what it actually means to be real.
Here's our syllabus for today's deep dive. We'll cover the happy ending myth, Kubrick's true blueprint, blending two directorial giants, programmed love versus mortality, and finally, the real tragedy.
All right, let's start with Section 1, the happy ending myth, the Disney illusion. Okay, let's dive right into this massive film Twitter myth. You've probably heard the story, right? Stanley Kubrick spent decades trying to make this film, couldn't quite crack the technology, and ultimately handed it over to Steven Spielberg. After Kubrick passed away, Spielberg finished the job. Now, the long-running theory here is that Spielberg basically ruined Kubrick's signature brand of cinematic nihilism by tacking on this warm, fuzzy Disney epilogue, just because he couldn't handle ending things on a downer. Because of this myth, there's a huge divide in audience perception. People assume the final act, where David the robot boy gets a magical day with his long-dead mom, is just a warm hug from Uncle Steven. They see it as pure sentimental closure. But the Kubrickian reality? That ending is actually a haunting lullaby totally drenched in existential dread. People love to think that Kubrick, the meticulous weirdo with the penchant for irony, would have left David eternally frozen, just staring at the blue fairy like a Windows screensaver. But the assumption that Spielberg somehow softened the blow is completely backwards. Moving on to Section 2, Kubrick's true blueprint, the mastermind's outline. So the actual reality completely shatters this whole creative custody battle myth. There was absolutely no bait and switch here. The truth is, Kubrick and his longtime collaborator Ian Watson had already sketched out this exact finale long before Spielberg ever finished the job solo. Those early script drafts, some of which were even written by Spielberg for Kubrick back in the day, already included everything we see on screen. The future entities, the frozen blue fairy, the one-day-only resurrection of Monica, none of these were emotional detours tacked on at the last minute. This devastating emotional whiplash of a finale, it was the endpoint all along. And this brings us to a huge, widespread misconception. When we get to that ending, audiences see those slender, ethereal beings and immediately think, oh, Spielberg brought in aliens. Actually, scratch that. They are absolutely not aliens. They're advanced mechas, highly evolved, futuristic robots, and they were entirely Kubrick's idea. The whole framework of these advanced beings excavating the remains of humanity and finding David was a highly specific, deliberate part of Kubrick's original design. Which brings us to Section 3, blending two directorial giants, intellect meets heart. It's profoundly fascinating how these two cinematic titans actually merged their styles to craft such a devastating narrative. People always want to neatly separate the film into Kubrick's cold first half and Spielberg's warm second half, but doing that totally undercuts the reality of their collaboration. It is incredibly ironic when you look at how the creative dynamic really played out. Stanley Kubrick, the intensely clinical mastermind behind The Shining and 2001, was actually the one pushing for the sentiment. He was the one advocating to give the little robot a day with his mom. Meanwhile, Steven Spielberg, a director famous for wearing his heart on his sleeve, was the craftsman executing the eerie, cold framework of a sci-fi fable. He layered visual poetry over Kubrick's incredibly dark concept. It's literally Kubrick's intellect meeting Spielberg's heart in this rare, pure hybrid. And, we don't even have to guess about this. Spielberg's own words are concrete proof that he was faithfully fulfilling a shared vision of emotional ambiguity. He wasn't sneaking a happy ending through the back door. He was executing the exact blueprint Stanley insisted he direct. Spielberg himself noted that Kubrick thought Spielberg could handle the emotional scope of the story better than anyone else. Spielberg said it best. This was where Stanley was going to take the movie. And even if I didn't feel such an obligation to fulfill Stanley's vision, that would have been my vision as well. Section 4. Programmed love versus mortality, the cruel math. Let's shift gears to the core thematic question of the film, the clash between artificial devotion and human finality. AI isn't just a movie about robots. It's a really profound exploration of what it means to be loved, to be real, and to be wanted. 1. Just one single day. That is the agonizingly finite time David is granted. When the advanced mechas bring Monica back, they make the rules incredibly clear. She is a clone, and she has no memory beyond this 24-hour limit. When that one day ends, she will go to sleep and never wake up. It is an incredibly dark countdown ticking underneath what looks like a beautiful reunion.
Because here is the brutal, undeniable reality the film presents. Love isn't a loop. It ends. David is a machine built to love obsessively and endlessly. He doesn't grow, he doesn't evolve, he's programmed with an eternal, desperate need for his mother. But the film forces this immortal machine to brutally confront human mortality. Real love, human love, simply cannot exist in a permanent, simulated loop. It has an expiration date, and David's total inability to accept that is what makes this whole story so deeply uncomfortable.
Finally, Section 5. The real tragedy, a manufactured closure. So why is this polarizing ending actually a masterclass in Kubrickian cruelty disguised as wish fulfillment? Well, if you look past the beautiful score and the soft lighting, the reality of what's happening is just staggering. What audiences so often mislabel as a happy resolution is, in reality, a sinister, totally manufactured sequence. First, the mechas run a simulation of the perfect day. Second, the cloned Monica goes to sleep forever. And third, David dies, or more accurately, his program permanently shuts down. He goes to sleep, never to wake up. This is not a fairy tale ending, folks. It's a literal shutdown sequence designed for a machine that desperately needed closure. It's a cautionary tale about needing love in a world that simply cannot give it to you. And if you ever, for a second, doubt the film's bleak undercurrent, 2,000. That is how many years Teddy, the super toy, sat in the dark, watching and waiting. Teddy carries the emotional weight of two cinematic giants. He's the silent witness to this entire tragedy, waiting 2 millennia just for this simulated, fleeting moment of closure to finally happen. So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this thought. The tonal shift from the nightmarish techno-circus of the film's middle act to this quiet tragedy at the end is entirely intentional. It is a tragic lullaby for the machine generation. So we really have to ask, if love is just a programmed loop and David's perfect day was a manufactured simulation, did he ever truly experience love? Or was he just a machine waiting to be turned off? Did this ending actually give David what he wanted or simply what he was programmed to need? Definitely think about that the next time someone tries to tell you this movie has a happy ending. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and keep questioning what you see.